Sprint 11-12 show and tell. This is our first one since April the 1st. It's been really good not to have to keep saying post-vesting day. I've just said that about 1,000 times in the run-up to April the 1st, so never have to say that again. As Connolly said earlier, we've merged these sessions now into just one a month. We'll sum up everything that we've been working on through the whole month. So these sessions are all about showing you what the project team is working on, getting your feedback, showing you the kind of things that we'll be doing next. So really keen to get everyone's involvement. If you haven't been to these sessions before, we like them to be really interactive. We'll be talking about all the project work that we're doing, but really keen to get people to have their say. So please do use the chat function, throw things in there, and people will monitor that and answer anything. And then at the end, if you want to put your hand up and ask any questions, that would be great. If you can stay on mute throughout, unless you're talking, that would be really appreciated as well. So in terms of what we're covering today, this is the agenda. So I'm going to give a quick introduction. Then we'll be talking about how the team has changed for phase 2, the team setup and the rituals that we're following, the achievements in April. There's audience participation activity at the end, which is always good fun. And then what next? And then your opportunity to ask any questions or comments at the end. So the next slide, I think, shows the overall timelines, what we're working to. So seems a hell of a long way to November when we first started all this work, but we've ticked all of those things off in terms of building the new MVP sites for April the 1st. So in terms of April, it's been pretty much about stabilization for the team, really, going through a lot of the feedback that services, staff, the public, customers have been sending in. That's been really valuable. So we've been actioning as much as we can there, just to make things as tidy as possible, really. In terms of our team, same as the rest of the council, probably, we've been forming our new team. We've got a new web team that's going to operate across the north and the west. That's been stabilising, getting to know each other. Some of us met through the project, but just getting up to date on how we're going to work across both councils. We've got a couple of intranet pages up, both sites, where you can just contact the web team. There's a form on there to do that, so please have a look at that. If you search for web, just to open up any channels so people can get in touch with us if anyone's got any questions. Just building up resilience. Some councils' web teams, it was just like one person, 1 or 2 people in there. So building up resilience, doing some cross skilling, cross training. So if people are off, everyone was catching up with annual leave after a huge effort for vesting day. Just making sure we've got a bit of resilience and cover there, and just responding to issues, fixes. Some of the new content's been added for elections as well, and then just starting to plan for phase 2. So that's very much what we've been doing in April. So where we go next, hopefully to the next slide. Feels like there's a hell of a lot of work has gone in over the last year to just get us to the start line. So this is very much where we are. This is where the hard yards really start, trying to create the 2 new councils. Our focus is obviously on the council websites. What we've built, what we've got so far is just MVP, minimal viable product. Massive amount of work that we've still got to do to aim to close the 2 sites that we've got. Aim to build the 2 sites that we've got, close the other 7 or 8 sites, the main council sites, and not only move the content over. We don't want this to be a lift and shift exercise, but really improve the content that we've got and make it as customer focused as we can. So we're all planning on that. I mean, if you look at the next slide, kind of showed it as a bit of a mountain. How we're going to work to stabilize the sovereign sites, keep the sovereign sites going, so services can still operate, but still build these 2 new sites. I think our message really is, if you've got editing rights to your sovereign sites, you can carry on doing that. You can carry on updating content, that's fine. And we'll be approving that content if they're the processes that are in place. But if you're looking to do anything new, if it's new forms or new processes or anything like that, it's our ask really is to think about unitary. And are you talking to your counterparts in other services? If you're in the old districts and boroughs, what are they looking to do? If we can do this on the unitary site first, that's going to be our preference. So we're putting our timeline together for how we're planning to move the content over and improve it. But at the same time, we know the world doesn't stop. Every service is still going to be doing things and wanting to operate. So it's going to be a juggling act. But if we carry on doing everything on the old sovereign sites, we could be doing this for 10 years. So yeah, come and talk to us. If you're looking to do something new, a new form, we've got processes in place for that. We'll see if we can move these things onto Unitary a little bit quicker. And then in terms of accessibility, we've got a training course. So again, if you go onto the intranet sites, we've got pages up there for that. L&D have created a training course. It's all online, so just to learn about accessibility. The two new sites are really accessible, 100% accessible, and our job is to keep it that way. So ideally, we won't put any new documents onto the site. We'll create pages, but where you do need to put documents up, if you can send them to us in as an accessible document as you can in Word, and we'll finish those off. But please do look at those sites. It's going to be an ongoing communication and change of work practices, I think, to make these things accessible. So yeah, this slide came in a couple of minutes after I'd talked about it, but this is our challenge. So we're on a little bike. We've got this huge mountain to climb in terms of building these new sites, and we've got to find our way through it. But we're confident. We're really looking forward to it. There's a lot of work for us to do, but we'll be working together to do it. So pass you over to Connolly now, who's going to talk about our phase 2 work.
Hi everyone, I'm Connolly. If you haven't joined before, I previously spoke about how we work in a kind of agile fashion, and so I just wanted to touch on what that means. And so on the screen now, there's a couple of, I guess, meetings or ceremonies that we have. So every sprint, we meet as a team and we plan. So that's called sprint planning. We have a stand up, which is ultimately a chance for the team to, at the moment, sit down and talk to us as squares. But usually we'd be standing up in a room all together and talk about if we've got any blockers, and we kind of help to make sure that we can continue to do work as what we planned in the sprint planning session. We have a retrospective. So after me, I'm going to actually hand on to Panos, one of the new team members who was involved in the first team retro. So you kind of hear a little bit about the thoughts of how we thought as a team we worked in the previous sprint. This is a show and tell. So that's the one that we do after each sprint to kind of get together and acknowledge some of the great work that we managed to achieve, that we set out to achieve in sprint planning. And we'll also, in the next few months until in June, there'll be a few lunch and learn. So this is where a couple of the Future Gov colleagues and potentially decent colleagues as well will come on during a lunchtime. It's called Lunch and Learn. So you bring your own lunch and you can kind of learn about different topics. So the first one that's going to be planned in May is all about service design. And there was a poll sent around. There's going to be one about organizational design and change. For phase 2, we realize that we don't have the up and coming impending deadline of MVP, but like Richard said, the work doesn't stop. We are working in 2-week sprints. So if you just imagine a time box of work, that's what we're going to try and achieve things by. And you can see there how the rituals kind of span out across the 2 weeks. I am very pleased to introduce that we've got a few new team members in our team. So we've got Panos, Chris, Lawrence, Anthony, Steve, and Paul joining the core team for phase 2. And I'm going to hand over to Panos now to talk about some reflections in one of the retros that we did.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Connolly. And as Connolly mentioned, my name is Panos. Some of you might know me from the Intranet project, but I'm new to this project. Good to be here. But yeah, as soon as I joined, there were a few challenges, let's say, that I was faced with, and having talked to other people as well, it seems that it was a recurring issue. You can see some of the challenges listed right there, but I would like to talk about a couple of them. The first one being sitting around and saying, well, what am I actually doing here? Like, what is my purpose, essentially? And the way I overcame that, and I guess the way we've discussed during the retro that we should overcome that, is to be okay with ambiguity, which is a little something that I think as local government organizations, we're a little guilty of not doing that much, being okay with ambiguity. So it's something that definitely helps understand what you're supposed to be doing on a project. The other thing that, again, we want to encourage more people doing whilst we're onboarding them in the future is to be bold, basically, ask questions. demand, quote unquote, some clarity, demand some things that you would want to be done more clearly. And as for actionable things and much more, to the point things, would be what I sort of dubbed contextual onboarding, I guess, which is not that imaginative, I must admit, meaning that people who are just onboarding could have a small meet with the different work streams, let's say with the content work stream, or let's say with the dev work stream, so that they can get a context of what they've been working on. For example, how did the project start, what they were doing, what they're doing now, and what they're planning to do in the future. This not only helps the people who are onboarding, but it may also help the actual work streams, because a pair of fresh eyes might just give you insight on something that you hadn't even thought of. Another one of the challenges I faced, like the big challenges, was information overload and a bit of a tools overload as well. So it was quite funny because for the first week, I remember my calendar being from completely empty ended up being completely, colored and complete, like with meetings every single day. And not only that, but we had to communicate through different channels like Slack or Teams or emails. And then we also held meetings, user testing meetings on Zoom, sometimes on Teams. We also had files on Google Drive, on SharePoint, there was 2 Trello boards and Miro. And I'm getting tired even like speaking like through all of these, because they were a lot at the time. But that's something that has been recognized again by a lot of people. And the idea moving forward is that we need to group everything together in a way that will work for us as an organization, not just now, though, not just in the next 2 months, but way, way into the future. So the obvious choice, I guess, is 365 with that. But again, how do we make 365 to work for us? Small example of that is that within the user research workstream, we already started working on that. So we've created our own channel in Teams. We've started grouping all the videos we've had so that when we make new videos, they go automatically to a Teams folder again. We're trying to basically like homogenize the way we work. And the little geek in me couldn't resist and say, let's have a link to rule them all. Any Lord of the Rings fans out there? So yeah, these were a few of the onboarding challenges I had, and some of the ideas we had like during the retros, I guess, to help smoothen out the process for anyone else joining. And with that, I'm just going to pass it over to Connolly again. Thank you.
We really wanted to share with you, because we know how much of a massive change there has been since April 1st, since Vesting Day, where effectively 8 organizations with different processes, different tools, different systems have come together to form 2 new entities, or 2 new unitary authorities. So I think what was really interesting is, as a core website team, we've been working together since September, November of last year, as Richard showed you in the timeline. And now we've come to phase 2 post Vesting Day. We've had a few team members leave or swap out, and we've got new people joining. So it's that process of, for anyone who's really interested in Teams optimization, but of forming, storming, norming, and performing. So we're kind of going through that, I guess, teething period where people are leaving or coming on board. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you, just in case in your teams you're also having a similar thing and could potentially learn from any of the challenges, ideas that Panos just shared. So what have we achieved? So since April 1st, it seems like quite a long time ago, which is the big milestone. We've done quite a lot, and I will start with saying we got the websites live on April 1. So that's an obvious. I hope you all know that and you've been using them since then. But on April 1st, we are able to, if you go northants.gov.uk or westnorthants.gov.uk, or a lot of people are actually getting there through Google, and Michael Shelton will talk to you about a few more stats shortly. A few quotes from stakeholders are on the screen at the moment. So it was really good to get involvement all the way from the public beta and the private beta, and also to get feedback from members, the task and finish groups, from councillors, and also from residents, which the user research team will be sharing with you too. Fiona, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, from that, we've had actually a session from Councillor Ian McCord. He participated in a session with us, which was really insightful, as well as Councillor Lloyd in the North, who stated, overall, I'm pleased with the whole of the website, not cluttered, works, does what you want.
Yeah, so it's really, really great. So if you've got anything to share as well in terms of your thoughts, I think Richard mentioned the web team intranet pages there. So we've got some forms. So if you're listening in and you've noticed something on your phone or your tablet, or when you've been doing your day-to-day work, any bugs, suggestions, errors, ideas, we're really more than welcome to hear from you. So please click on those links. Hopefully someone in the team will put them in the chat. If not, when I jump off this, I'll pop these on the chat for you. These were presented in the last board, but just there's a lot of data here, and so I'm not going to go through all of it. I'm actually going to hand over to Michael to talk to us about some stats that are easy to understand.
Thank you, Connolly. Yes, so the first one we're just going to show you is it's something called heat maps, and it's an app that's called Hotjar. That's something that is searchable on Google, but be careful what you're typing in there. Basically, this shows you effectively when someone has clicked on a page, the color, the Hotjar will light it up, and the warmer the colors, so starting with blue and then going to green, yellow, and red, the more they've clicked on. So sort of effectively the north and the west are fairly similar. The search in both areas are kind of very, very hot in that area. And then underneath, you can see sort of, again, sort of key sort of landing pages, and then some of the sub pages below have been clicked on. So far, we've just taken a couple of heat maps. But what is interesting is this one compared to the one from the week before, actually, there was a lot less clicks on these home pages, which is suggesting that already people have maybe started to identify the areas they need on the sub areas, so whether that's housing or council tax, and have saved those to their favorites or are going in straight via Google. Okay, go to the next one, please. Thank you. And then basically, so the next two slides are just some stats, again, from the first month of the North West websites. Interestingly, or they're sort of fairly similar. I think there was just about 19,000 views in the North, approximately 18,000 in the West. In terms of usage of how they get there, so nearly 60% of usage is via a mobile phone now, and only about 40% via desktop and tablet. And as you can see, they're currently just clicking between the two very kindly. They're very similar. In terms of the most popular pages visited as well, the 5 homepage contact us, pay council tax, which sadly never changes. The website launch and bins recycling are the same. And in terms of how people get to the website as well, so direct so just from the website, the web URL and Google were the top ones, and then North and West were obviously redirects from the old sovereign areas. So in the north, Kettering, sort of east, and then in the other ones, Northampton and Northamptonshire. And in terms of what people are searching for, again, on the landing on the Unitary site, so fairly similar, slightly different variations with sort of variations on waste in the west and the north, but similar through. And this is sort of data we can gather every month as well. And as we start to look at transferring content, this will be some of the things that we'll be working with the teams to look at to say, what is your most used content? Can we improve on that? Is there more we need to do? And that'll just be an ongoing process with you all. And I'm going to hand over to Fiona now.
Hi everyone, I'm Fiona. I'm working on the user research team. You probably would have heard from me in previous sprint sessions, or you've had a session with me, which has been great. So as Mike mentioned, we're using Hotjar, and this is part of the unmoderated testing that we're doing. So essentially, any person who reaches our site is able to provide us with feedback using a red feedback tab on the site, and it kind of follows you around the site to see where you're going. Also, on specific pages, there is a search pop-up that will answer your question. Did you find what you were looking for today? And all of that gets sent through to us, and we review it on a weekly basis. So in the North, we've had 71 general feedback responses and 524 search-specific feedback. So with that, we will review them and add them to essentially the content kind of feedback document that we're working on to ensure that when people are typing in those words, they are getting what they're looking for essentially. And in the West, we've had 90 general feedback responses and 579 searches, specific feedback received. That's from the 1st of April to today. As part of the moderated testing, which is where me or my colleague Panos or Lawrence will host a session with one-to-one with either staff member, councillor, and then a member of the public. We've had 66 to date, which is great progress. And we've had a recent push on signing up more people to our panel. And to date, we've got nearly 500 people signed up, which is really good. And we're looking to talk with more businesses to test certain journeys through there. And the task that we've recently been asking people over the last couple of weeks is understanding the site transition to register a birth journey from the sovereign sites to the new unitary sites, as we're aware that people are still going to the sovereign sites and then may end up back onto the new unitary site. So just understanding whether they know where they are and can tell using the, obviously we've done the branding to see if they notice that and just to see how clear the information is to them. And we've also looked at councils and democratic services. Obviously this is linking in with the May votes. On to the next slide. As part of the Hotjar feedback, there is a kind of almost like an analytics kind of style data format, which tells us and collates all the feedback. And currently in the West, we've had a slight decline. I think it was 2.6 out of 5 from the last show and tell. These may be things where people have commented where they've said they can't find something, or say a link isn't directing where they thought it would be, or a document. So those are kind of some negative and neutral comments that have come through. In regards to the North, that is kind of staying steady at 2.6. Again, with the feedback, if we go to the next slide, I can show you a bit more of the specific feedback that we've received across the sites. So in the West, we've had on Twitter that the website is good and perhaps not 100% precise, but it's often good to look at different links. We've also had a comment about RSS feeds. We've linked that in with the devs team, and they're looking at that in our next sprints or next couple of sprints. We've also added a quote in here from a recent user testing session. This lady was very kind of insightful. She'd worked in kind of mental health care environment, and her thoughts essentially were she wasn't sure about how successful they will be as they're obviously growing and that's slightly larger than your sovereign sites. And she mentioned about they having a higher level of education and shared services. How would this be tailored? There are local anomalies and there are certain deprived areas. What mechanisms are in place for the right people and decision making in the North and West? If we go on to the next slide. And some more positive comments here. People felt that the information was easy to find. We've added a kind of information notice on all the content pages to explain to people that when they're being redirected, what's happening, they can find out more. Somebody's also mentioned that the text is nice and clear. And another great comment was that somebody felt that the imagery that is being portrayed on the site is really useful and that they can get to know certain areas and certain landmarks. She also mentioned about reviewing safeguarding pages and would like to give us more suggestions on the navigation, but good job, nicely done. So yeah, we've had some great feedback. I'll pass you on to Lawrence to talk through more about the user testing cycle and where we're moving on with that.
I'm just going to play spoiler because I'm going to take over instead of Lawrence. Sorry. Sorry, guys.
No problem at all.
Yeah, apologies for the anticlimax. So yeah, this is it's just a very, very short thing about how we're planning on keep doing our user testing cycle. This is pretty standard. It's standard user testing cycle where you go in, you do some discovery, then you figure out how and what content you're going to migrate across. And then once that is done, we also go and you do some user testing on that. It follows the principles of, user-led and data-driven, as the whole project has tried to do. And if you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, this is a little bit different. It's we called it a custom user testing cycle, which was bold, where we wanted to also include the dev workstream a little bit, and of course a feedback loop. So if the dev workstream comes up with a new feature or something, we want to also include that within user testing, and also feedback what the user testing has given us to both the content migration process and the dev workstream. And if you can go to the next slide, where you can very obviously see that Lawrence has not worked on this because I just made it last minute because it's ugly. This is how it will actually work eventually. So there will be different stages in which we will either be discovering, or content will be migrating, or will be user testing. But that doesn't mean that it's the only piece of work we're going to be doing. There is also going to be another piece of work with a different service area, which is going to basically follow the same feedback loop. But we do want to actively engage with the dev workstream and, of course, the content workstream, so we can have a much smoother interaction between them, and also test, if possible, more than one thing per sprint, if that makes sense. So yeah, this of course is still a work in progress, as the tribal graphic shows, and also it's going to take us a little bit of time to smooth this out and find out what works for us. But with that, I'd like to pass it on to Lucy.
Thanks, Panos. Yep, just to give you an update on obviously how the forms are progressing. So it's not a bullet on there, but just to say that the go live of the forms on the 1st of April went really, really well. Everything seems to be functioning as we'd expected. And since the 1st of April, you can see there we've been managing some new form requests. So obviously from myself, coming from the county-wide services element, so NCC, some new requests we've had through are from service areas I've not spoken to before, so that's really interesting for me. And we're also looking as well to duplicate some more of our county-wide forms, so the sovereign NCC forms, just to make things a bit easier for our service areas to be able to process North and West data, obviously if they're separated teams basically. So they're two services we're focusing on there are adult social care and some education services at the moment, and we'll be doing some more comms about this shortly, but just to kind of put it out there, so any sort of former district, borough or county forms, if you're finding that you're no longer able to access data, or you're not receiving notifications that form has received submissions, please do let us know, because we're just obviously trying to tie up any loose ends with perhaps any email addresses that aren't now working since the 1st of April. So we will be sending out some more comms about it, but if you would like to let us know that you're finding any issues with those forms, I've just mentioned there again our request form on the North and West intranet pages. If you submit those through there, that would be brilliant. And then on to the next slide, just a couple of stats really for some of our new MVP forms that we went live with from the 1st of April. So these stats start from the 1st up until the 27th, so Tuesday this week, just to show you there the number of submissions we've had through the contact forms for the North and West, the have your say forms for North and West, so the compliments, comments and complaints, and then there again the order of registrar's copy certificate for both North and West. And then just on the next slide is just some stats. So at the end of every online form, we have a function where customers can also leave feedback, so similar to the Hotjar platform that we have on the website. It's a really useful function, and it's always really worthwhile. So we sit down and review that feedback every 2 weeks, and it's a 5-star rating. So as you can see there, those same forms for North on the left and West forms on the right, they're all performing fairly well. We tend to kind of class a high performing form around 4 stars out of 5. So their average star rating is good at the minute. So yeah, and I'm going to pass back over to Panos again.
Yeah, hi again. So with Prince Philip's passing, the devs pushed a quick update to the website of a monochrome theme on both websites. Apologies, I don't know if you got the chance to see it. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So yeah, this is sort of what it looked like a little bit. It was a quick fix to an obviously unexpected situation. The user feedback we got around that was a little bit mixed. However, it is worth mentioning that the positive feedback we got was mostly around the recognition of Prince Philip's passing, whereas the negative one was around the website usability, which was essentially compromised. So that's something that we took on board, and we started thinking of how might we keep usability on the same level while also recognizing his passing. That's a challenge for the current monochrome theme changes, and I'm saying monochrome in quotation marks because there might be a different way to actually go around doing that. And one of the other ideas moving forwards was to amend the homepage to display certain events rather than the whole website, and just keep the rest of the website the same so that usability is not that affected at the end of the day. Yeah, just as a small side note, I guess. So with that, I'll just like to pass it on to Ian, who's going to talk about a few search enhancements.
Yep, hello everyone. I'm a content designer from FutureCore in the project, and I'm actually going to be reading most of this next slide because a lot of the work that's been done has been from the development side, unless Lee is here and ready to chat. But are you here, Lee?
Yep, I'm here.
Great, I'm delighted. Go for
it. So yeah, on the development side, I'll touch on it a bit more on when we get to the development update, but we mainly done some improvements with the search itself. We've kind of been watching the feedback we've been getting and making various tweaks to improve the search results. And it's obviously something we'll be continuing to monitor and further improve. I'll pass you back to you, Ian, because obviously a lot of this refinement has been content based as well.
Yes, yeah. So we've been trying to act on the user feedback really. So all the testing. So wherever we've found that people are having problems with specific terms and there is something that we can do about it using the CMS, we've done that. So basically within Drupal, the CMS that we're using, there is a section for adding keywords. So we've been collecting that feedback and then adding those keywords to that section of the CMS, which means that the results are much more likely to appear when people search for those terms. And that's that's the bulk of the work we've been doing, and we've still got more to do as well.
Next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, as I mentioned, we made some refinements to the search again. This will be an ongoing process where we'll be continuing to monitor all the feedback based on the search and tweaking as necessary. We've made further accessibility tweaks to the news landing page. We've added some new functionality so that you can add landing pages within the free section links on the homepage. We've also brought through the icons that are used onto the actual homepage into the landing pages themselves. We've added a brand new slice, which we can use to either highlight or warn information within the pages themselves, so you can kind of place those wherever you'd like in the content. We've added some audit tracing and logging of content when it's published outside of working hours, and a dashboard that can reflect what's been published then. We've also been working on the Modern Gov branded templates. These have been created now and they're currently in the process of being tested. And we've started doing continuing with the developer onboarding for this project as well. I'm going to pass you over to Robert.
Cheers. Yeah, on accessibility, the usual updates at the moment. On the automated accessibility checker, our sites have both currently slipped to 9 out of 10 from 10 out of 10. We know what's causing the issue and it should be fixed shortly to get us back up to 10 out of 10. The L&D accessibility course has now been rolled out to existing website authors. So far, only 35 people have completed the course. So if you have received a link, please take the course, and I'm just posting it again now in the chat. And Assure Trust's manual site assessments are now underway, and we'll receive their initial findings in a couple of weeks. Can you go to the next slide? It's just a little bit here about what other councils have done. You can see the accessibility graphs here for 3 other councils who have gone through a similar but not so complicated process as us. And the points on the graphs are at 3-month intervals. On the left is Buckinghamshire, who you can see did have their accessibility up to 9 out of 10, but it has subsequently dropped to 5. In the middle is Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, who have gone the other way, turning their totally inaccessible site to scoring 8 out of 10. And on the right is Dorset, who have seen their site peak at 8 out of 10, but since dropped to 3 out of 10. This to show that accessibility is not a one-off fix. It's something that has to be constantly monitored, with issues being fixed as soon as they're spotted. And having an accessible website is a legal requirement for all public sector websites. And we have set ourselves a target to be among the best in the country. I'll now hand you over to Connolly or Stephen.
Yes, I think it's me. So one of the big things other than search that we've been focusing on, based on what Richard was saying, is kind of stabilize after vesting day, was looking at directories. Directories was something that we thought we'd look at initially before vesting day go live, but different things were prioritized higher than this. Directories was something that was brought up from both staff, counsellor, and resident interviews. And so what we wanted to do, now we've gone past the challenge of getting into vesting day, the MVP sites are live, is throughout the next few sprints is really go through a process of discovery and refinement. So Chris and Stephen are looking at the directories across the sovereign sites and what their unique, what resident needs are. What's the purpose of the directory? Why is it there? To then enable us to create a unitary directory mock-up or theme to put through testing before we put that through development. So keep your eyes posted. Hopefully in the next show and tell in May, you might get an update on all things directories. If you've got any questions on directories, please put it in the chat or ask a question at the end. I am going to hand over to Ian to talk all about content and also run a bit of an activity with you.
Yep. So I'm still Ian, the content designer, but I have taken my jumper off. That is one difference. So I've got quite a few slides. I've somehow ended up with quite a few slides here, so I apologise for the next sort of 10 minutes of talking or whatever it is. I've actually, Connolly, I've just noticed that that I'd put a slide in before that. I'll try and remember what it says, but I thought it'd be good to set a bit of context. It was just like what has just happened. So in terms of content for the project, we had two. It's not there. It's not. I must have done it on a different one. It's okay. Two core people, so Stephen and David, have done all of the work really in terms of moving the content from one site, from all the sites to the two new sites. So that works out around 1,000 pages, 150 privacy policies, and that's a lot. So the process so far has been very much one of what we call lifting and shifting. So it's been a real case of, we have a deadline, we need to move stuff over, and so that's like a huge achievement. But the focus has really been on speed and hitting the deadline, which we did. That's it. Next slide. So our process now over the next couple of months is to try and kind of just hit the brakes a little bit and try and think about how we can do content really well, not just like now, but over the next couple of years and beyond. So to try and put some processes and systems in place to make the process of moving content from the sovereign sites to the new sites smooth, but also that the content is great too. So we ran a content workshop a couple of weeks ago, or last week. And some of the things that we're trying to focus on is just creating like a team and like the structure of the team. So yes, we have the web team, but like kind of who touches content at what point. Yes, we have Stephen and David still as our kind of content designers, but who touches content at different points in the process. And part of that is about building good content foundations. So we talk about having content principles and using plain English, but what does that really mean? And as it says here, like, are there any opportunities to do training? Again, this is not just about people who are working with the content day in, day out. It could be those people who are signing content off or in service areas, anywhere where we can kind of improve the process by adding some training and kind of improving skills. We'll look to do that. We're also obviously migrating a lot of content, so we need processes for that. So we're working on that at the moment. And just establishing this idea of a content workflow. If we take a single piece of content, how does it get from A to B? Basically with lots of 8.1s, 2s, etc. So yeah, so this is that workflow. This is the process that we're designing. And to be honest, Panos touched on a lot of this as well from a testing point of view. But ultimately, there are these four kind of things, areas that we're looking at, phases. There is the discovery phase, so the idea that content comes out of research and data, so we really get to understand it before we do anything with it. Then there's the design process, then it will go through testing, and then there's this idea of a loop that it will always be reviewed, even if it's in months down the line. It's just that it's important that content doesn't go on the website and just gets left for years and years. It's the idea that we're creating a loop. So this is all very much work in progress, but here we're looking at those phases, who's involved, what tasks might be completed, and what tools have we got. So the tools bit is quite important because that's the bit that will actually help us make this happen. And you might, even if it's like a spreadsheet, you might see these things in the future. Michael, I'm going to introduce you. This is your work. It's fantastic.
Yes, myself and Steve Marshall, one of the BA. So what we're doing is grabbing a sort of a master sheet of everything, really. So we've began to go out to all the service areas in the North and West to get a couple of web contacts for each of these areas. Identify times of year when content can and could or probably could not be migrated, which is probably a key one. So if they've got any obviously like democratic wouldn't want to move content in the middle of elections as a key one. And then what we're also doing is we're carrying out an audit of what the remaining web pages, documents and online forms are on the existing sort of district and county sites, and linking these to the service areas, so we can just get a sort of a big wider picture. And then from that, what we'll start doing is then contacting these services, have an initial meeting, say, right, this is what we want to do, this is the information we need from you, and then just start to work through a phase of getting this content moved.
Great. So we're going to be working with service areas, obviously, and at the moment we're putting together kind of a draft timeline of kind of which services we're going to look at first, and we'll share that as soon as it's ready. And obviously we'll get in touch when we need to work more closely with each service area. But we kind of want to sort of point out that this is going to take some time. Like from a service area's point of view, we are not going to be just copying and pasting. This is a design process. It's why we're talking about it in these terms, because it's really like a critical process. What needs to go onto the new sites and how should it look, what should be there, what shouldn't be there. So it's going to take like real collaboration and time putting aside to really get it right. There's a couple of other things we're doing in terms of training. So we've already got a lot of the comms team using the CMS, using Drupal, and they're adding news articles now. For using the CMS, we're going to use something called Loom to create like a bank of screencasts. So these could be even just 10 or 15 seconds long, or they could be like up to a minute, but really short videos that show exactly how to do certain things using the CMS. They can include transcriptions as well. They get automatically generated by Loom. They're not always perfect, but it's better than nothing and can be tweaked. And these are going to focus on really specific tasks. So how do you add news items to the homepage, for example? It's a little checkbox. So we're not going to make you wait 10 minutes into a video to find that out. We're going to make these videos really specific and about completing tasks. The reason for Loom is that it hosts the videos for us, and you can just share them with a link and just send them to someone in an email. It's really great. And then content design guidance as well. So in doing all this work and creating these workflows and looking at the process of creating and managing the content, I'm going to go through content design principles in a minute, but that's what we're going to focus on. And again, it's this idea of like critical thinking. So not just copying and pasting, not just thinking, oh, well, you know, we'll put it on now and come back to it later. We really want to try and embed this idea that each piece of content is very special and deserves its own thought, and that there is a loop that we constantly sort of research, design, and then test. One of the things we're going to do is run a plain English workshop, and I think we still need to figure out how we do that, but I think we're going to open that up to like the wider team, at least the web team, maybe further. And just the idea that content design is more than words. So although most of the pages will be words, part of the role of a content designer is to kind of park the words to one side and go, okay, what is the solution to this user need? What does the user need from this page? Is it a directory? Is it a calculator? Is it an image or a video? And so that's what I'm saying there. And it's also an opportunity to use that photo of Extreme.
which I didn't know who they were. And if you don't know who they were, it's okay. Ian will explain in the chat. If you do, bonus points.
Okay. So it's just one question really at the end of a few slides where I talk more about what I've already talked about, but it's just one question that I want to kind of ask. But before we get there, what is content design? So we're effectively going from this idea of lifting and shifting. We just need to build a website and put some content on there, lots of content on there, to kind of like, how do we do this well at Northants? How do we want to do it? So as I think I've already alluded to, this is from Sarah Richards, who wrote a book called Content Design. She was the kind of the founder of content design as a discipline in some way. She gave it a name at GDS, and so it's a way of thinking. So it's really about that critical think I've already talked about, but also it's about data and evidence. So it's about all bits of content that go onto your site come from knowing what the user actually needs and from putting some research in. So it's not about guessing. It's not about just moving things over because that's how we did it before. It's about using research and really finding out what people want and then trying to do that design thinking to kind of present it in a way that they need. So way of working, collaborative, so it really is all about working together. It's not just one person making a decision or even someone up high telling someone to how it should be done. It's a collaborative process. Evidence-based, just said that. Conversation starter, I think if some people might be surprised when they're asked to kind of provide evidence or put some research into why a page should exist or a piece of content should exist. So it kind of, whether the conversation is positive or challenging, it actually gets people talking. But the main thing is that it's all about the user. And I saw Juliet put there in the chat that that's really the focus of the entire website. It's about this user-centered design. So yeah, what users need is not what we want. It's not about business or organizational decisions. And these are the 4 stages, which I've kind of already talked about: discovery, and then we create user stories. And Connolly's gone straight through, and I don't even know what the last 2 said.
Sorry.
That's about as big a hint as I could possibly have, so that's fine. it's all right. I've talked about it all. It's okay. So this is the question that I wanted to ask for an activity, and we're going to use Menti, so you can go and put the code in and kind of write whatever you want to write. Is how does content get made and published now? So whatever you do, whichever service you work in or whatever your area of work is, how does content get made and published now? Like, what are the common barriers? What processes do you use? Have you got specific like spreadsheets or like documents that you tend to go to? What are the good things? Just a real kind of open-ended question, really. So where you are now, how does content get made and published?
And you don't have to be part of the content team. When Ian and I were talking about this activity, if you're in comms or in marketing, if you make any leaflets, or if you're in working with forms, how do the words get put on the page, whether it be a website page or a leaflet? I'll just share my screen. We haven't got anyone on it yet, but if you go to
put the Menti link in the chat.
And part of the reason for asking this is that we are going to be working with lots of different service areas. David and Stephen are going to be working with lots of individual people. So we don't expect there to be one way of doing it. People will have different ways of working, different ways of creating content, more people involved in different areas. So it's just to get that kind of overview of the kind of things that we can expect.
And so we'll just spend another minute or so. So if you go to menti.com on your mobile phone or on another tab and type in this code up here, hopefully someone's put it in the chat.
Yeah.
And when we say now, it could be you reflecting on the team or workflow that you were in the Sovereign teams. So before we became Unitary, because obviously we've only been working together in Unitaries for just under a month. So hopefully that will help trigger some inputs. Brilliant. Starting to come through now, Ian.
Yeah, I mean, and anyone's welcome to say it out loud as well, rather than type it in. Yeah, tools is a good thing as well. Any sort of tools that you already use, that's handy.
I can't see the Teams chat, Ian, but I might just flick back to the slides just so that we have time for questions. And I think it's up to, there we go. So feel free to keep entering. I'll pop that on again at the end of the presentation. Juliet, can you see my screen?
Connolly, sorry about that. Yeah, I can. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so phase 2. So we've been spending a little bit of time looking at what the roadmap should be for our next stages. So our primaries, we've got a few aims really for the website. So one of the key objectives we've got is obviously we need to get the content off of the sovereign websites, as we've spoken about, but we also want to make sure we're creating that content with user needs at the center of it and working alongside transformation to basically give the user the best experience possible. So we've got these as a sort of 2 of our main objectives. So there is quite a lot of thinking and work to do, and we need to make sure that we're aligning with the transformation work that's going on in the services too. And so we've been spending a bit of time looking through that. So I think so this has been, it's kind of quite a lot of information that we've having to gather to take part to bring that all together. And we should be closer to that in a couple of weeks' time, I would say. So we'll be able to update you a little bit further at the next meeting. But in the meantime, we also have, if I could move to the next slide, please. Yeah, in the meantime, we've also started to look at what some of the quick wins that we can do. So alongside this, we've got be planning out a number of different activities that we can do with the website. And you've heard about some of these earlier. So we've been looking at the monochrome theme and a longer term solution for that. We've also been looking at search enhancements and at also so see, I can't see this text here, but it's small sort of information directory is another one, and also alerts, an alerts banner that we want to be putting at the top of some of our pages for the services. So these are things that we can do quite quickly and get in place. One of our other key objectives is also to upskill some of the members of the team. So unfortunately, FutureGov are with us at the moment, and they're upskilling us in many different ways, but we have to plan ahead for some point when we will be having to work more independently on our own. So FutureGov are upskilling us with a number of different key things too. So that's really where we're at, and I hope I can update you a bit more in a couple of weeks. Thank you. Right, I think the next slide is any questions.